Hello everyone, it has been a very long time since I last uploaded, but what you can see behind me here is a packed bag. So let's get on the move and I'll tell you where I'm going. Okay, so here we go. I'm on my way to intercept my friend Luke on the motorway and get this trip underway. I was tracking his location via WhatsApp and joined the motorway just at the right time for us to drive in convoy to a place called Lee, near Woolacombe in Devon. Lee would mark the end of our 4-day walking and camping route, so we left my car there, and then Luke drove us back up to Minehead and parked up. This meant that we could start walking this first portion of the 630-mile Southwest Coast Path route from the official start line, and that's where this video will now begin. We began our walk at 8 PM on the Thursday night, trying to get a head start and make the most of the long weekend. A passerby kindly took our picture standing in front of the famous statue that marks the beginning of the Southwest Coast Path, and then off we went. It was a really warm and sunny evening. Although I had already walked about 40 of the 50 miles we were about to walk, in shorter individual sections over the last 10 years or so, I'd never walked the first 2 or 3 miles of the Southwest Coast Path, so it was an exciting way to begin this adventure. I say adventure because until this trip I hadn't done any multi-day camping and walking, so this was a new challenge for me and something I've been wanting to do for a while. Arriving on top of the moor, greeted by ponies and another interesting animal which I'll show you in a moment, you get your first proper elevated view out over the sea. It was the perfect evening to be out walking, you couldn't really ask for anything more. In these warmer conditions, when the bracken has grown and formed a nice shady canopy, my snaky senses are always tingling, and I keep an eye out for adders. This evening, the sensors set off the alarm, and we found an adder lying out in the open, which was a bit unusual. At first it looked as though it was still alive, but it didn't react to me. It was in perfect condition, and its eyes were still even moist and shiny, so I was a bit confused. Looking back at the pictures and doing some research online, I think it might have had mouth rot, which can be fatal. One of the causes of mouth rot is prey like a mouse catching the insides of the snake's mouth on the way down, and then those scratches become infected and inflamed and prevent the snake from feeding. Walking on past the belted Galloway cattle that roamed the moor here, we carried on towards the area where we'd be staying. We'd booked campsites for the second and third nights, but opted to get a few miles under our belts before wild camping on this first night. I watched a few sunsets and sunrises from this part of Exmoor over the years, and this one was right up there. You get big views over to Lynmouth in the west, South Wales to the northwest, and the Somerset coast stretching away to the north on the other side of the Bristol Channel. I filmed this trip in June, and by this time it had been 5 months since my last wild camp. It felt really good to be back out in the night. I've been out doing lots of walks these last few months, but camping gives you that extra extended stay out in nature that I'd been missing. I watched the sun burst out across the sea just before 5 AM. You know when you wake up in a hotel room or a friend's spare room and it takes you a moment to remember where you are? Well, waking up on top of a cliff with an uninterrupted sea view at sunrise is just like that, but with a boatload of goosebumps thrown in. Check out my dehydrated banana discs. This was my first go at using the dehydrator my parents gave me for Christmas. I chopped 3 bananas up, whacked them in the dehydrator for about 16 hours and reduced them down to 36 grams. Add water, wait a few minutes and you have delicious real-life bananas in your breakfast. Some cloud cover meant that we had a cooler start than expected on day 2, which was a bit of a relief. There was something inviting but also a bit intimidating about being able to look across and see the entire length of day 2's route stretching out ahead of us from where we'd pitched our tents. It was meant to be around 18 miles with around 4,000 feet of elevation, though it ended up being a bit longer than that in the end. So we packed up, made sure we'd left no trace where we spent the night, and got day 2 underway. Dropping down to Hurlstone Point, we were both a bit surprised to find that our legs were quite wobbly. Luke and I are both active people, we weren't really expecting this at all. My pack weight is often heavier than the 16.5 kilos I was carrying on this trip, but for some reason it took half an hour or so for our legs to wake up this time. With 10,000 feet of elevation gain to come over the 50-mile weekend, I hoped this would be the last of the wobbly legs. Moving on from the old Coast Guard lookout point, we headed down to Bossington and across Pullock Marsh to Pullock Weir. The last time I walked this section I had a broken foot and ended up hopping to Porlock to get a taxi back to my car, so it was fun to be able to walk it with both feet intact. If you're going to walk through a field of wheat, you've at least got to try to look like Russell Crowe as he makes his way into the Roman afterlife, haven't you? A short section of Pebble Beach carried us to Porlock Weir, giving us a view back to the hill where we started our day. This was when the clouds left the building and started to unleash that heat wave on us and the sheep just before the day's climbing began. In this shot you can see the grey outline of Fallen Point in the distance. Our campsite lay about 3 or 4 miles beyond that point. There's a signpost pointing to Culbone here, which is just over a mile from where we left the beach. Culbone is a tiny hamlet in the woods reached via the fairy tale tunnels that formed part of Lady Ada Lovelace's fairy tale mansion. She was the daughter of the famous romantic poet Lord Byron and lived in the early 1800s. Culbone was a complete surprise to me the first time I walked through these woods. It sort of emerges from the trees and then disappears again in the space of about 50 footsteps. There are a couple of houses and it has a tiny little chapel that was built no later than the 11th century. So it's over 1,000 years old and has been tweaked and added to over the centuries. It's 11 metres long and can hold up to 33 people. So welcome along to the second day of this 4-day walk along the southwest coast path. I've just moved on while Luke sprays himself with some anti-insect spray because the horseflies are biting us here. And we're on a little bit of a diversion at the moment because part of the official southwest coast path is blocked off with a landslide. I think it's quite an established diversion actually, but the official southwest coast path map was a little bit confusing in that spot, so I'm just following the route that I've plotted on my Garmin watch here, which is really helpful. And we are, I think, around about 8 miles into day 2 with around about 8 or 9 miles to go. And I will pass you back over to the montage with voiceover now as we keep making our way along through slightly bipolar weather. I think the cloud and occasional showers have died off now. We're back to sort of 25 degrees Celsius, something like that. I'll see you a little bit further along. So while we're here at Fallen Lighthouse, it's a good place just to point out some of the locations from today. So over here we have Selworthy, and that's the general area where we camped last night. We then dropped down to Bossington, round the bay to Porlock, and then basically we just made our way all the way along the coast out here. We are currently at Fallen Point, as I say. We've got round about 4 miles to go. We need to do a lot of climbing now to get up to Countisbury, and then we drop down into Lynmouth. And the path closure earlier cost us round about a mile, so today is going to be round about the 18-mile mark when we're finished. So we're about 14-15 miles in at the minute, and we are both very enthusiastic about just having a little pause in Lynmouth, getting about 16 pints of lime and lemonade, and then we'll carry on and do the last mile or so, which is all uphill to the campsite we're booked in at later, I should say. Brain is going. The wonderful sight of Lynmouth. We are at 18.3 miles for today. We haven't quite finished because we have that last uphill walk to the campsite, but we are going to go and find some nice cold drinks and give our feet a bit of a rest before walking up and doing that last stint. Well, that lime and lemonade tasted even better than it looked and powered us up the hill to our campsite. I hadn't been to a campsite since I was a kid, apart from the summer in 2023 when I took a solo road trip up to Snowdonia on my motorbike and camped by the coast up there. That Snowdonia campsite was pretty basic, but Sunny Lynn campsite just outside Lynmouth proved to be a clean and cheery place to stop for the night. It was popular, but it was a peaceful place, and we got pitched in our reserved spot. It's a real novelty having flat, level ground where someone has even cut the grass for you. No slopes, no lumps and bumps, no horse muck, thistles or rocks. It was luxury. On this trip I brought my Naturehike Vik 1 tent to keep weight down, as well as my OS Maps Brecon Beacons quick drying towel for my parents. I had a look at the towel at one point and realised I'd camped in at least 7 locations on that map. Hello and welcome back. We're on day 3 out of 4 now. We are on our way out of Lynmouth. We kicked off our day with 2 massive cooked breakfasts called a challenge breakfast at the Sunny Lynn campsite. I definitely recommend that campsite, it's really good. We had a really friendly welcome when we arrived. The showers and toilets and everything are really kind of fresh and new and clean. And it's got a really good Thai restaurant just next door, literally 50 metres out of the back of the campsite. And if you don't go there, then you've got to go all the way into Lynmouth really, so not only is it convenient, but the food was really good and we had a really warm welcome there as well. So we are making our way along from Lynmouth across to Combe Martin for today. Originally this route was going to be 14.8 miles I think, but we cut a little bit of it out. Instead of descending all the way down into Lynmouth to pick up where we finished yesterday, we've just kind of cut out some of that drop and climb because it didn't really seem worth it for the extra effort to drop down and climb up again, just so that we didn't miss out a tiny section of the path that we've both walked before anyway. So we are now on our way to the Valley of the Rocks, and today is, like I said, it's meant to be about 14 miles, something like that. Yesterday was 19.93 miles in the end all told, so this actually feels like a much easier day, even though we have the fairly steep-sided valley of Heddon's Mouth, and then we have the climb up to Great Hangman as well before dropping down into Combe Martin. It's been raining a little bit, as you can maybe tell on camera, but it's meant to stop by 11 o'clock. It's now 10 past 10, so all being well we'll have dry weather for the rest of the day. Reasonable temperatures, so it was 17-18 degrees Celsius instead of the 26-28 degrees we had yesterday. And of course those temperatures are recorded in the shade, so in the sun it would have been around about 40 Celsius I would have thought while we were walking. But we had some shelter from the woods, which was that was appreciated. It was quite nice to duck out of the sun under the trees. So I'll pick you up along the way on this walk today. thought I should talk about some of the equipment I'm using on this trip. So my pack started out at around about 16.5 kilos on this one, and I have used my Naturehike Vik 1 tent, which has a claimed weight of 1.1 kilos, but I actually weighed the tent and the pole at 900 grams, just under 900 grams. So when I add my selection of pegs, I think that brings it up to just under 1.1. I've got my Flextail Zero R05 sleep mat. I actually brought that in favour of my Thermarest Neo Air X Therm, just because I find the Flextail mat more comfortable. And although I bought the Thermarest trekking chair kit, which only weighs in at 300 grams, I actually bought a little mini lightweight aluminium folding stool. It was only £13 on eBay, and it weighs 800 grams. So I think by bringing the Flextail mat and the aluminium chair, I'm only paying something like a 200 gram penalty over the Thermarest setup. And I get a really proper chair there where I can sit off the ground and kind of take the weight off my feet and everything. So I'm quite happy with that purchase really, and I've used the chair, it's really comfortable. Besides that, I've got my Cumulus Quilt 250, which has been more than warm enough because the temperatures have only dropped to about 16 degrees Celsius in the night. I've got my Flextail Zero pillow, and a new bit of kit for this walk actually is my solar charger. I can't remember the name of it, so I'll stick it up on the screen. But my Garmin watch I'm using to navigate us was running quite low on battery, and I realised that I lost the little USB-A to USB-C adapter, so I couldn't use my battery pack to charge the watch. And then I remembered that my solar charger has a USB-C outlet. So I plugged my watch into the solar charger, left it out in it wasn't even sunny, but it was quite a cloudy, overcast morning, but was able to boost that power from 40% up to 65% on the watch in not very much time at all actually, so that was a win. We are now in the Woody Bay area. Just give you a little bit of a view of what we can see. And the next major, I won't say obstacle, next major landmark will be Heddon's Mouth, which is one of the two big climbs on this walk. So we're about halfway through our route for day 3 at this point. My sleep was short and poor on nights 1 and 2, but I wasn't really feeling tired or lacking any energy. I think a lot of internal energy can magically power you along when you're where you want to be and doing what you want to be doing. And speaking of being where you want to be, look at that view. This seemed to be the perfect spot to have a sit down and take on some more fuel before the descent and climb up out of Heddon's Mouth Cleave. Just as we sat down for a snack, I think we hit rush hour for everyone else waking up and getting out for a walk. You can't blame them. Don't you just love finding a spot like this where you can look back at how far you've come? It's really rewarding, but for me as well, this view and this walk were really good for filling in some of the gaps I had in my mental map of the Southwest Coast Path. In terms of food on this trip, we both kept things pretty simple by opting to eat out in the evenings. During the day, I was snacking on peanuts and flapjack, plus 1 Snickers bar per day, and we both took tortilla wraps and peanut butter for midday food, which is what we're eating at this particular snack stop in the video. It turns out these are really heavy going to chew through, and after the first one I started referring to them as grout wraps, because I might as well have been scooping bathroom grout into my mouth rather than peanut butter. Anyway, back to this view. The furthest point you can see in the distance on the right of the screen is Fallen Point, where the lighthouse was. But that's enough looking back. Now it's time to move forward up to the top of Heddon's Mouth Cleave. We're about to drop about 150 metres down to the bottom before climbing up to that dark horizontal path you can see about 3/4 of the way up on the other side of the valley. This day involved another 4,000 feet of ascent, and climbing up out of this valley was the penultimate major climb of the day. Again, one of those satisfying looks back at where you've just come from, and then on around the next corner to see what views will greet you. I love how rugged this coastline is. Steep cliffs, blue-green sea, birds, goats, wildflowers, deer, and lots of other animals busily doing what they do. And some animals that aren't quite so busy. By now, just one last climb separated us from reaching Combe Martin, so we marched on and squared up to Great Hangman. I'd only climbed this once before, but remembered it being much harder last time. Don't get me wrong, it was still a good slog in the middle of this heat wave, but as I was finding with every aspect of this trip, it was an enjoyable challenge and only charged me up. You can see the route here, just taking a couple of diagonal cuts to ease the gradient. As tempting as it was to jump headfirst into the shallow river at the bottom, we carried on to the top, knowing that cold drinks and showers waited for us at the other end. We are almost there now. We've got about 1.9 miles to go, 13 miles down. I think we've just ticked over the 7-hour point now. We've taken our time, we've had a few stops along the way for refueling and putting sun cream on. There have been a couple of rain showers earlier on in the day, so Luke is prepared and has a waterproof, so he was putting that on. I was just getting rained on. And yeah, we found it's been really important and valuable just to take the odd 5-minute break here and there, because it just gives, I've noticed it in my feet mainly, it gives your feet a chance to just kind of relax, decompress, cool down a bit, and just taking 5 minutes off can make the next half hour feel much easier. I've been really happy with the socks I bought for this trip, so I've got these 1,000-mile double layer socks on. I did go for a trial walk last weekend with a bit of weight in my backpack to see how these new trail shoes felt, these Asics shoes I've got, and I came back with not a raw heel, but I had a red heel that was feeling like it was going to turn into a blister quite soon, so I had to come up with a better solution than the socks I was using, and these 1,000-mile socks have absolutely done the trip. I've got almost no rubbing going on at all. So we had 20 miles yesterday, we're doing just under 15 miles today. And although you can feel all of that stress in your feet because you're on your feet for 7 hours so far today, it was 10 hours yesterday, and all the weight on your back, of course, your feet do take a bit of a hammering, but besides just feeling like they've been working really hard, thankfully I haven't had to deal with blisters, which is a huge plus point. So we'll descend these last 1.75 miles I think we're on now, get to tonight's campsite, have showers, get the tents up, and we'll head out somewhere for dinner. We all know that feeling of getting close to the end of a long walk or a steep hill or a long day at work. You always get an extra burst of energy and enthusiasm as you head for the finish line. And when that finish line involves walking downhill instead of uphill, a sunny harbour view, a lazy summer's evening, the prospect of a shower, fresh clothes and a pub meal, it almost feels as though you're being carried those last few steps. So it was on past the flowers and the beach to our next campsite here in Combe Martin. Once again we got ourselves pitched and set up, with Luke's Terra Nova Quasar working well within its limitations in this weather. Here you can see my portable solar charger lying at the foot of my tent to top up my batteries. I was really surprised how well it managed to suck electricity out of overcast skies. But here's a quick whiz around my pitch. For 110 quid, this tent has been brilliant over the last few years. It's my lightest tent by far, quick to pitch, and offers a really useful amount of space within a small footprint. Unfortunately, the Vik one is no longer available to buy off the shelf for some reason, so mine is probably worth at least £500 now. Here's breakfast at the start of the fourth and final day, and since we had those cooked breakfasts in Lynmouth on the previous day, I decided to dig into an extra portion of my leftover cereal and treated myself to some bonus calories to power me up the hills. So while I demolish this bowl of cereal, I'll give you another look at my Big Blue solar charger. I'd been researching all the options for 2 or 3 years before eventually buying this one. I like how compact it is, and I weighed it to be 427 grams, which is less than half the weight of the 30-watt charger I originally looked at, made by Anker. So it's time to get packed up for one last time on this trip, knowing that this last day would be shorter and easier. At just under 10 miles and just over 2,000 feet of elevation gain, we were able to carry less water to keep our pack weights down. I set off with only 1.5 litres on board this time, whereas on day 2 I'd been carrying 3.5 litres of water. Just look how small this tent squashes down in its dry bag. With everything packed in and buckled up, we were back out onto the path for the last stretch. It was another greyish start with just a brief rain shower while we packed the tents up, and then a warm, dry day after that. First we passed through Widmouth, taking to the beach for a short portion of the path, and then we carried on towards Ilfracombe, coming across a tailless slow worm en route. I moved it off the path and hopefully its tail grew back. Next up was Heel Bay, where an educational marine animal stranding course was taking place on the beach. Climbing to the top of the old hill fort here gave us our first view of Ilfracombe. Back when we were sitting at our viewpoint near Heddon's Mouth, eating our grout wraps, a lady came searching through the undergrowth behind us and all around us, looking for a geocache that she needed to maintain. She recommended that we stop at Joey's in Ilfracombe for ice cream, so we made that our first port of call. We made the necessary purchases and found somewhere to plonk ourselves, keeping an eye on the local feathered thieves while we gorged and zoned out for a bit. This was when the chaos and noise suddenly hit me. That extreme contrast of peace and an absence of time on the coast path versus noise, smells and people hurrying to get around. Life on the path happens at whatever pace you want it to, but as soon as you enter a populated area like this, everything happens at double time. Move out of the way, do you want a receipt? Excuse me mate, is anyone sitting here? Everything becomes a blur, and before you know it, that delicious ice cream is no longer worth the chaos. You just want to get back to the path where everything is quiet and you can stop and admire the view without being barged out of the way by bucket and spade. Despite my melodramatic take on this contrast, Ilfracombe is a lovely place to visit under normal circumstances. We sat by Damien Hirst's famous statue of Verity in the harbour while we reapplied some sun cream because the weather was well and truly back into summer mode by this point. With only around 3 miles remaining of our 50-mile adventure, I had mixed feelings about reaching the end. I've been wanting to take on this challenge for a while now, and although it is hard work, it had been more manageable than I expected. It felt like I could carry on and do more, but of course the day job meant that I needed to be back at my desk on Monday morning. We wandered through a vintage car show as we made our way out of Ilfracombe. That white 3-door Sierra Cosworth on the end was in nice condition, but you don't really see many of those selling for under £50,000 these days. Another mountain of Budleia gave me a chance to satisfy my addiction once more and pow me along the next 3 miles. Across the 50 miles we walked over these 4 days, we'd climbed around 10,000 feet, which is just over a third of the height of Mount Everest. The shape of this coastline means that there is no easy way of smoothing out those peaks and troughs, so you have no choice other than to go up them and down them, burning through sweating calories as you go. You might look a bit like this beetle on your first day, but bit by bit, you adapt to the demands, you find your feet, and you settle into a groove. Everyone will get something different out of spending their time feeling the sea breeze, covering miles, pushing limits, or taking their time and relaxing in the sun. But for me, this trip ticked all kinds of boxes that I didn't really appreciate until afterwards. We are about 1.5 miles from the car now, which we've left at Lee, which is just a little bit further west along the coast from Ilfracombe. It's a little bit windy now. We've had loads of really warm sun as well. We had rain again in the morning. And just before we left to come and do this adventure, there were health warnings of a heat wave all the way across the weekend. So we've had every piece of weather going really. I didn't pack my waterproof jacket because I didn't see the point in an extra 300 grams of weight when we were destined to have nothing but 28 to 30 degrees Celsius all weekend long. To be fair, with the weight of the rain we've had, I probably wouldn't have put my jacket on anyway, so that's no great loss. But yeah, we're just going to tip over the 10-mile mark on this day. We were about 15 miles yesterday, 20 miles the day before, and 5 or 6 miles on day 1. So yeah, this is day 4. The feet are still feeling really good actually. I picked up a small blister on the back of my right heel last night, but it hasn't bothered me at all today. I think Luke's holding up okay as well. His feet have not been too bad, but I think I'll leave voiceover James to give a bit of a debrief after this one, because yeah, it's been 3 particularly challenging days. The first day was quite easy. Not the best of sleep on the 3 nights that we've been out, and my brain probably can't talk too well and try and sum up this adventure, so I'm going to sign off here, and voiceover James will explain the bits that I've missed on this little outro. It's really hard to sum up everything from this 4-day adventure in under 2 minutes. One big thing I learnt is that pack weight is really important, so I've already taken a few steps to improve that, and I'll make some videos to share that side of things with you. Carrying 2 kilograms less water on that last day made a huge difference, so that's the minimum I'm aiming for in terms of pack weight reduction. On a more personal note, this trip was huge for me. This time last year I felt completely trapped by knee pain that wouldn't allow me to walk more than about 5 miles, but also by agoraphobia, which I touched on in a video at the end of last year. I absolutely love being outdoors, and I'm so glad that I'm now able to get back out and walk until the sun goes down. I know that many of you watching will know how time outdoors can top up the energy levels. There's a book called The Salt Path, which I was a really big fan of. It's been a huge inspiration to me, so it's been really disappointing to hear the alleged claims of falsehood behind the book and the film. I won't go into that too much on my channel, but despite the change in my feelings towards the author of the book, the coast path itself still holds all kinds of magic for me, and for everyone who walks it. I'd love to hear from anyone in the comments who has walked some or all of the path, or if you plan to take on the challenge. So here we are at the end of this first 50-mile chunk of the path. Only 580 miles to go. I can really appreciate the appeal of multi-day hiking now, and this won't be my last. I'll leave links in the description to the official Southwest Coast Path website, the campsites we used, and my kit list from this trip. I'd like to thank Luke for agreeing to do this trip with me, and thank you to you lot for sticking around when I've been pretty absent from YouTube over the last year or so. I look forward to reading your comments, and I'll see you on the next one.